So if a startup is a funnel, then how should you think about running your business in that way? How does that impact how you run each of these areas of your business, from marketing to sales, on through to delivery, actual product and engineering, etc.? Well, let's start at the top of the funnel, right? And start with marketing and how to think about that, or how I like to think about that. And so I think the key thing to keep in mind is that there's a concept from e-commerce called ROAS, or at least it's mostly used in e-commerce, and that's return on ad spend. So for paid advertising, this is applicable. It's actually applicable for all forms of advertising, whether that's something that's like unpaid, like a cold outbound, like email. Maybe you don't have huge costs with that if you run it internally, but there is still fundamentally, there is an investment. And so you can always measure ROAS, or return on ad spend. And so with e-commerce, it's really simple, right? You're selling products, you're running ads, and you can see if you're making more money from the sales generated by those ads than you are spending on the ads that you're using to drive that. Even with, let's say, a Google ad campaign or any form of search engine marketing or a social media marketing, you're running the campaign. How many leads are you getting? How are those leads going down the funnel? How many of them actually closed? And you can see the return in terms of the lifetime value. Really, that's how you want to think of it. You may not know in the earlier days exactly what your lifetime value is going to be from a customer, but just to give you an example, if you have a SaaS product that is, I don't know, I'll just say $300 a month, and you assume that you're going to hold on to that customer for 3 years, just to use the basic, baseline. So that is, well, that's $3,600 a year times 3. You're looking at almost $11,000 in terms of the total over that lifetime. We'll just call it $11,000. So $11,000 is what's coming back to the business over that course of time. How much did it cost for you to win that cost of acquisition? That's what goes into your ROAS calculation. So if you win that customer and it costs you $1,000 to win that customer, well, one way of looking at it is how many months does it take to pay back, right? And so in that case, 3 months. Let me give you the gold standard that I look for when I look at these ROAS calculations. And this is what we learned in the early days of Hidden Levers when we were just starting to spend money on marketing. So up until that point, it had all been guerrilla marketing, or it had been, I guess, what I call hand-to-hand combat. So directly messaging, emailing, commenting on posts, doing all that sort of stuff. We were getting in touch with financial advisors because those were our customers. A lot of cold calling too. So all of that form of outbound was sort of the unpaid initial work. And when we think about putting that into a ROAS calculation, well, that time was my co-founder, my business co-founder, Raj. He was doing that work. And so really the expense was his time. But from a certain perspective, when you're a founder and you're working for equity at that point, you have no salary. There's still a notion of ROI, but you're not spending hard dollars. When you are spending hard dollars, the metric that we used, like the mark of excellence, is essentially a 1-month payback. And we found that in the best case, that even, just to illustrate a different marketing channel, even going to a conference could pay back in 1 month. So I remember when we went to the TD conference. This was TD Ameritrade, so one of the big, what they call custodians in that industry. They work with financial advisors, and now they've been acquired by Schwab, and Schwab does the same thing. They work with financial advisors, and they actually throw a big, they used to throw a big conference, and Schwab still does, but they throw a big conference for financial advisors. So you have sponsors at those conferences. Some of them are tech vendors. We went in, and probably got whatever the startup kind of kiosk or whatever that package was. So it was a relatively inexpensive conference for us. I think we spent like maybe $5,000 all in. And so the payback threshold was we were able to close more business on the floor of that conference than it cost us to go to that conference, or between the floor and between closes that happened with customers from that show immediately afterward. So that literally meant that if we were selling it between $300 and $600 a month in that time frame. So we added over $5,000 in MRR. So that first month, we got the $5,000 back. And then every month after that is accretive. That actually leads to, if you look at it, if you're thinking again from a recurring revenue perspective, that is a 12x ROAS. If you just look at it on an annualized basis, actually it's larger than that because the lifetime value of many of those customers, they lasted years. And so not everybody did, but some of them lasted, beyond your typical 3-year sort of horizon that you look at when you're thinking about, how do you guesstimate a SaaS customer lifetime value. So 1 month payback is 12x. It's really 12x plus if this is recurring revenue. In our case, some of those customers would have been 30 or 40x. That's the gold standard. Doesn't mean you're going to hit that with everything. We quickly found that while some of those early conferences, because we were a new product coming into market, went really well, it dropped. And of course, you would expect it to start to drop. And so, 1 month became 2 months, became 3 months, and it started to fade as our product, gained sort of exposure in the market and you didn't have those ultra early adopters to grab anymore. But still, this is the absolute gold standard in the early stage. By definition, any ROAS greater than 1 at least is making you money, but you want to be at some multiple, you don't want to be at like 1.1. In e-commerce, sometimes that can work because you can scale. And so just any number greater than 1 can be okay. But because in a traditional, like if you're a SaaS company or if you have to have any sales function at all, there's implicitly the time spent on selling. So really this return on ad spend or return on investment, whether that's again a conference or whether it's even the time, the cost of paying the employees to run an email campaign, you can compute all of that and see that if this number isn't probably at least 2x, you're probably getting too low. So that's how I like to look at it. But again, this is just the top of the funnel. If we can do some activities that are generating leads that are, actually generating that, then we can get into the later stages. And you can't compute this until you see how all the other functions execute against it. So step 1, though, is to try and get the leads in and get them in at a cost that enables you to have at least 2x, but all the way as high as 12x and more return on that expenditure.